With government budgets, there's often not enough money to go around. Some lawmakers think South Carolina prisons are a place where that budget can be cut, and a bill in the State House could let criminals out of prison sooner to help save the system money.
Marissa Chancino dug into the numbers to find out just how much the Department of Corrections is spending and why Representative Tom Rutherford thinks it's a problem.
It's a pretty lengthy bill known as the Sentencing Reform Bill. It affects several kinds of criminals, including drug offenders and older convicted criminals. And Rutherford hopes the outcome frees up state money that can be put to better use elsewhere. Manslaughter, kidnapping, and armed robbery. Those crimes are considered serious crimes, referred to in state law as no parole offenses. But despite the name, some criminals convicted of those crimes are eligible for parole once they've served 85% of their sentence. In its original form, House Bill 3322, proposed this year, would let those criminals out sooner once they've served only 65% of their sentence.
And when I heard this proposal about this new bill, I literally stopped eating because we were eating dinner when this came on the news, and I said, "You have got to be kidding me."
Lynn and Gabriel Gore are relieved that particular part of the sentencing reform bill has been taken out. Their son was murdered in 2014. His killer took a plea deal for manslaughter.
Now they're talking about a bill to release these people. Okay, dog fighters, okay. Drug users, okay. Murderers, that's a slap in the face to people that are going through what we've been through.
15th Circuit Solicitor Jimmy Richardson says letting violent offenders out of prison would be detrimental and jeopardize public safety, so he's happy lawmakers reconsidered.
You got to learn to fight battles, and not every hill is worth dying on. But when you're talking about kidnapping and manslaughter and all of those terrible charges, letting them out in 10 years as opposed to 30 years, that's the hill to die on.
But that doesn't mean that other convicted criminals could be serving less time if this bill passes. Representative Todd Rutherford served on the Sentencing Reform Committee before this bill was introduced. He says it's been revised to focus on drug crimes and violent offenders won't be affected.
We have mandatory minimum drug sentences, and some people are getting them with no prior record. 25-year mandatory minimum sentence. That sentence is going to run between $300,000 and $400,000 by the time that person is done. That's a ridiculous sentence.
According to the South Carolina Department of Corrections website, it spent $427 million in state appropriated funds in the last fiscal year. That's $21,000 for one inmate in 1 year, which equals out to about $60 each day for each inmate.
I think maybe we were, up until a few years ago, we had a lot of nonviolent people in jail. Now our prison system is much lower than it was 5 years ago. I mean, our population has gotten way bigger in South Carolina, and in Myrtle Beach and in the Grand Strand area, it's the second largest growing metropolitan area in the nation. So we've got more and more people coming in, but our numbers in the prison has plummeted.
Richardson says that in part is because this isn't the first time South Carolina has reformed the state sentencing for criminals. A similar bill was passed to focus on nonviolent offenders back in 2010. And since then, the average prison population has decreased almost 20% as of last year, since that bill was signed into law.
It's one of those things that South Carolina was on the forefront of. We did sentencing reform first in the country. We did not go far enough.
I dug into budget numbers we received from the State House Ways and Means Committee. In the last few fiscal years, the state appropriated the following funds in addition to what the Department of Corrections already had to operate on. In fiscal year 18, the state gave the Department of Corrections an additional $7.8 million. In fiscal year 19, the state gave the Department of Corrections an additional $9.7 million. And if the House's version of the budget passes for fiscal year 20, the Department of Corrections will get an additional $22.8 million in appropriated funds for that fiscal year. Rutherford says this sentencing change is something other states have done, and it's time for South Carolina to follow suit.
What we're going to do is bring South Carolina on par with our regional neighbors, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina. This is what they've been doing for years. We just haven't done it, and we're paying a cost for it. And that cost is we can't allocate resources. We're losing teachers every single day, thousands of teachers. We can only give them a 4% pay raise. They need 10. Where's that money going to come from if we continue to pump money into a prison to incarcerate people that we're simply mad at?
Rutherford says this bill has been pending for a while, and they've done several study committees and listened to the stakeholders. He says the most important part of this bill is that it won't decrease public safety at all, but it will save taxpayers money. In the studio, Marissa Tansino, WMBF News.